2022 BMW 530e, and that stands for electrified. So we have a plug-in hybrid, which means for this model, it's a gas engine. So we have an internal combustion engine on a plug-in hybrid, and in this case it's a gasoline engine. Plus we can plug it in and charge up a battery. On this model it's a little over 12 kilowatt hours, and you have almost 10 kilowatt hours usable. So we can drive around on electric. When the electric runs out, when the battery is discharged, it will start the engine. And then it just drives like a normal gas engine, except at lights and such, it can shut off the engine, drive a little bit on the electric. So in order to change the engine oil, we're going to need a few things. We're going to need a 24 millimeter 6-point socket. 6-point would be best. This is a 1/2 inch drive impact socket, so I have an adapter to take it from 1/2 inch to 3/8. I have a 3/8 ratchet plus a 3/8 extension. It's a wobble end. Not that it's necessary, and this is something that, let me show you what a wobble end does. It wobbles. So you don't have to be straight on to whatever you're trying to tighten or loosen. But if you don't want it to wobble, if you have a good one, just push it all the way in and it acts close to a non-wobble extension. So you need those tools. We're going to have a little screwdriver in order to replace the O-ring for the filter housing. A 17 millimeter socket in order to take the drain plug off and tighten it back up. In order to tighten to factory specifications, we have an electronic torque wrench, and if you have an electronic one and you don't use it every day as a mechanic would, store the batteries. In this case, I put it in the case, and when I want to use it, I'll put it in the torque wrench. Then we have our oil filter. So this is not a metallic cartridge, but just the oil filter. We'll take the housing cover off, replace that. We also have, it will come with the O-ring for the filter cover and a copper crush washer for the drain plug. So we will change those out, as well as the filter. And since we're an independent Amsoil dealer, we are using Amsoil's European motor oil. This engine calls for 0W20 and European motor oil LS. So if you're a GM fan, you might think that's an engine code. It is not. It stands for low SAPs, and SAPs is sulfated ash, phosphorus, and sulfur. And this is required so that we do not poison our exhaust after treatment. I believe on these BMWs and a lot of European cars, we have, instead of a catalytic converter alone, we also have a particulate filter. And using high quality oils can help keep it in like new condition. I also use, in every single tank, I use Amsoil's upper cylinder lubricant. And the reason for that is not only does it help clean the injectors and lubricate the injectors, but it also provides lubrication to the top side of the piston and the rings, that top part of the cylinder that is sparsely lubricated, because when the gas burns, it's going to burn that oil that is residual on the cylinder walls. So this gets sprayed in with the gasoline and burns with the gasoline, but it helps lubricate the top end, which is above the piston, where the oil may not be lubricating. And This is to help keep my engine like factory new. So I'm changing the oil on this vehicle. First thing I'm going to do is change the engine oil filter. I'm going to make sure that this is the correct filter. If it was not, there's really not any point in my changing the oil. So this is just a beauty cover. It is functional. It does keep heat in the engine. It does have an actual functional design. Not only does it keep the heat in, but it also helps to dampen the noise, especially on these direct injection engines. They're a little noisy at idle. So we just have a little push. I don't even know what to call them, but you just push it on, pull it off. There's a little ball, plastic balls that are cast into these parts. Like this is the intake. And then we need to remove this cover, which this cover just has some metal springs up front and a little plastic piece that mates up right there. So we'll take this out. Our oil filter is right here, which I find very interesting that it's on top of the engine. The other thing that we need to do is pull these tabs for these wires, and we're going to move that out of the way so that we can get our tool, which is our 24 millimeter. Oh, I'm wrong. It's 27 millimeter. I don't know what I was using for 24 millimeter here. So correction, 27 millimeter. Let me go get that socket. I believe I was using the 24 millimeter on the mini loader that we have to remove those filters. So I had that installed on the extension here, and I assumed that was it, but I was incorrect. So you need a 27 millimeter for the top, the oil filter, and a 17 millimeter for the bottom for the drain plug. So that filter, grab this so I'm not dripping it everywhere in the engine bay. So what we're going to do here is remove the O-ring that is on the filter housing cover. So we need to open up our oil filter box. We'll remove our O-rings, leave the crush washer in there. We'll need that for the drain plug. And this is where we use this little screwdriver, get up underneath and just pry it off. And I'll take a little bit of the used oil, put that on the O-ring. And then you can slide it down. Not doing so good there. There we go. Biggest thing is just make sure it's not twisted. Even if you roll it down, just make sure that it is, when it finally gets down here, it is not twisted when it's in the ring, the groove. Now I've found with these filters, since there's a little bit of a, when I say a little bit, there is this tab, and there's an O-ring, so I'm putting the oil that's still on the glove on there. So instead of putting it in the filter housing cap, we're going to locate where that tab goes, and then we're going to put the filter, the cover on top. It's an interesting fit because the filter cover just pushes through this top felt material. Start it by hand then. There we go. It's always best to start by hand. It's just the filter itself is getting in the way of allowing the housing cover to thread into the housing. But we've got it now. All right, it is snugged up, so we will get a torque wrench out. It's an electronic torque wrench. Like I said, we keep the batteries out of it while it is in storage, because I might use it once a month, every other month, every 3 months. I just never know. So with these, turn it on. All right, so this one, we need to be at 25 Newton meters, which is roughly 18 pound-feet, which is what shows on Amsoil website. They show 18 pound-feet. And if I can remember correctly, both the filter housing cover and the drain plug are both at 25 Newton meters, which turns into 18.44 pound-feet. So 18 pound-feet will be good enough. It doesn't have to be exact, especially for a filter cover and a drain bolt. All they're doing is holding themselves on. And this tells us where we were, 25.16 Newton meters. Perfect. So I'll go ahead and turn this off so that when we go to the bottom side and get the oil out, it'll be ready to tighten that drain plug up. On the top side here, I'm just going to leave these covers off until I fill it back with oil and start the engine. And I want to make sure I'm not leaking anywhere here and also at the drain plug. So I'll leave the covers off until I've started the engine and I've got the oil circulating, make sure there's no leaks. So let's go to the bottom side and we'll get the oil out and put that drain plug back. First thing I'll do is put some concrete protective, a piece of cardboard. There we go. Then I'm going to get my drain pan. Put this underneath. And then I'll grab my shop rags, shop towels. And we have our 17mm wrench, or ratchet. 17mm socket on the ratchet. I'll also grab our torque wrench. Towards the back of the engine, you'll find a drain plug. You'll also find this circular hole in the cover for the underneath the engine. There's supposed to be a cover here. Whether or not for the North American market they put it there, I don't know, but I was the first one to change the oil on this engine and it did not have the cover. So it's very possible it does not come from the factory for the North American market. With that, or BMW dealership has not bothered to put it back on there, even though it's missing. So we're going to go ahead and loosen this up. go. Now we will drain the oil. Take our drain plug out. There's plenty of room with that circular opening that we should not be spilling the oil anywhere. There we go. Then make sure that the crush washer also came with your bolt. Sometimes, depending on how long it's been up there, it can stick up there, so we'll have to make sure we replace that. Now this vehicle is still under factory warranty and it's still under factory maintenance, so this oil does get changed by the dealership and it's paid for by BMW. All BMWs come like that. I did sell BMWs a while ago at a dealership. I sold Fords, I sold Subarus, I sold BMWs, and then I went back to Ford. I didn't sell them all at the same location, each at separate locations. And Ford was the only one that offered factory maintenance. So all maintenance items are covered for the first 3 years of 36,000 miles, which basically helps cover lease vehicles, because that's the typical lease, is 3-year, 36,000 mile. So if you buy a used BMW, there's no reason why the maintenance should not have been performed. The warranty is 4-year, 50,000 mile, but the maintenance is 3-year, 36,000 mile. I'm just getting up to get the crush washer for the drain plug here. So 3-year, 36,000 mile maintenance. So why am I changing the oil? Well, I'm coming in halfway on their oil service interval. I do not know what type of oil is being put in here, and neither did the service writer from the dealer. I asked him and he said, oh, I don't know, it just depends on which, excuse the noise here, I'm grabbing the copper crush washer. He said, yeah, it just depends on who they've got a contract with right now, and I don't know if that's BMW North America or BMW dealership. So it could be Castrol, it could be, and I asked Liquimile, he said, no, I don't know, maybe it could be, but it could be Shell, Castrol, Mobil, could be any of those. Obviously the oil would have to pass BMW's certification, but I don't know how good that oil is. And they have extended drain intervals on BMWs, as well as this being a plug-in hybrid vehicle. The engine goes through some cycles that it doesn't get up to operating temperature. So that's something that's really hard on the oil. We can go roughly 20 to 25 miles on a charge. So if we go to town and we're coming back, and the last mile or two the battery has run out and needs to turn the gas engine on, well, we've only driven a mile or two on the engine, saving us on gas, but it is hard on the oil to always be dealing with a cold engine, or often, I shouldn't say always, but often dealing with a cold engine running for a short amount of time. So the oil quality is very important for this type of vehicle, a plug-in hybrid or a hybrid. And that's why I'm changing the oil halfway through. The Magnuson-Moss Act of 1975 did address warranties from factories. There's no warranty required. It's just if they wish to offer a warranty on their product. Part of that stipulation of that law is that they cannot deny warranty coverage based on the parts that you put on the vehicle, and oil being one of them. As long as it's meeting the specifications, they cannot tell you which oil you can or cannot use unless the manufacturer provides you with those parts for free. At that point, you must use what the manufacturer provides you. So not only does BMW provide you with the oil and the filter, they pay a technician at the dealership to do it for you. You just bring it to them, they'll change your engine oil. And any other maintenance items other than wearable items like wiper blades, tires, brakes. But so if the brake fluid needs to be changed, anything that needs to be done other than wearable items, they will do. And you know, like an alignment that is not covered, because you could mess up the alignment very easily on your vehicle. So anyway, back to the point. I take this to the dealership, even though I do not want them to change my oil. I have to, in order to keep my warranty secure. I go about half the mileage, which it's hard to tell, this being a plug-in hybrid, because the engine on this particular vehicle, we've used it just under half the total miles. So the engine's used a little over half the miles on the vehicle. So maybe 45% of the miles on this engine, between 45 and 50%, have been electric. So the engine has only run roughly half the miles. So just over half the miles on the vehicle, the engine's been used. In order to keep my warranty intact, I have to take it to the dealership. I have to let them change the oil because of the Magnuson-Moss Act. Magnuson-Moss Act. But I only do about half the miles, then I swap out the oil for the Amsoil, which once I'm past the 30-year, 36,000 mile coverage for the maintenance, I will be doing this all on my own. And I'll most likely take it the full, suggested by the computer, the full mileage before changing the oil. Whether or not this would void my warranty, I can't imagine that they would say, oh, halfway through, you replace the oil with the correct oil and the correct filter, and so we're going to void your warranty. Maybe not. I don't know. I wouldn't doubt them trying if there was an issue, but can you imagine there being an issue? Changing the oil this often? It's about 3,500 miles for the oil and filter before it gets changed. And that's going to be that way for the first 36,000 miles. So I can't imagine, unless there truly was an issue with the workmanship or material of the engine, that there would be a warranty claim on it. The other thing, if part of that Moss-Morrison Act is that if you use an oil and filter of your choosing, they cannot deny warranty coverage unless they can prove that it was the oil. So part of that would be them checking the oil to make sure that it meets their specifications. So GM has its own specification. Mercedes, BMW, they would absolutely make sure that the oil that's in there, if there was a warranty claim, that it passes their specification. So if you are putting your own oil in, changing your own oil, make sure that it meets the specifications. All right, there we go. 25.21 Newton meters. So now that we've got the oil out and the drain plug reinstalled and the oil filter, all of this replaced, we're just going to put the new oil in and we'll start it up and we'll make sure that that oil is not leaking anywhere. All right, in order to put our oil in, take the cap off. I always like to check, make sure there's nothing, no contaminants up in here. Don't want to put those in the engine. Or have them on the sealing surfaces, either the gasket or what this gasket seals against. So, I'm going to pour this in without a funnel. I'm going to attempt that, but in case I mess up, I have that in place. And you always start a little bit further and then back the bottle up. So put it a little bit further than what you think it's where you want it to go. And then once you get the stream going, you can back it up a little bit. So to continue with the Magnuson-Moss Act, as long as the manufacturer does not provide you with the parts, you get to choose. And with oil, they would have to prove that the oil caused the issue. And one of those tests that they'll do on the oil is to make sure that it passes their own specification if they have their own specification. Many of them do. And like I said, all you got to do is go to the link in the description below. You can put your vehicle in, and Amsoil will show you all the products that meet the specifications. Any filters that they have that meet the specifications. So it's all right there. They also tell you how many quarts it takes. This one takes 5.6 quarts of oil. And the drain plug needs to be tightened to 18 pound-feet. And it's all right there on their website. You can also use the Amsoil garage. You can put your vehicles into their online garage, and you can also put in when you change the oil and at what mileage. You can tell it to give you a reminder at a certain time. So very useful tools there for you. If you don't use the garage, you can at least take advantage of it telling you which product they have for you, as well as how much oil it takes in the engine or the transmission or the differential. And for some vehicles, it'll give you multiple options available to you. FYI, for any plug-in hybrid or electric vehicle, if you see these orange cables, those are the high voltage cables. They're orange in order to tell you they're carrying a high voltage. Even if you have an electric car, there are oils, there are coolants. This vehicle, when I plug it in to charge it up, it does create a lot of heat to charge up the battery. And you'll hear the cooling system. I think it's air conditioned power, but you'll hear a little whine going. Electricity, even though you're not burning the fuel here, you burn it remotely. Even if you're sun powered. Now I need to put 0.6 quarts in here. The combustion is happening elsewhere, even with the sun. It's happening at the sun and not here. But it still generates quite a bit of heat discharging and charging. And there we go. I think we're right there. This will go in the trunk. And so now we're going to start the engine and make sure that we have no leaks. Alright, I just started the car up, and because the hood is open, interesting, I'm not seeing those lights in person at the top, those pinkish looking lights, so the camera's picking that up. But let's go over here, vehicle status, check control messages, hood is open, okay, great. Alright, engine oil level, it's going to say okay because that's where it was at, but there's no dipstick on these engines. So let's get out of the vehicle. Of course it's going to shut off. Oh no, it's not shut off. Normally when you open the door on this, it shuts off. So with the engine running, I'm going to come out here and we're going to look at that filter housing cover. Is it leaking anywhere? And it is not. Then we're going to go underneath. And we're going to make sure it's not leaking down here. Now, before I started it up, I should have made sure that we are, the oil I poured in here did not pour out, that I actually sealed it. Sorry about the camera work there. So there we go, there's the drain plug. And our filter housing's not leaking, so I'm going to put the covers back on up here, and then I'll take it for a short drive, heat the engine oil up to operating temperature, and then we can measure the oil level. Because, like I said, there's no dipstick. You have to get the engine oil up to operating temperature, park it on a level surface, and then tell the computer to use its sensors and tell you where the oil level's at. So, let me put this back together, we'll go on a little drive, and then we'll check the oil level. And now we'll check the engine oil level. Started the engine. Engine oil has to be at temperature, so took a drive, and now we can measure it. Yep, there's no dipstick on this engine, so it is nice that it will tell you if you're low on oil because there's a sensor in the oil pan. But if the sensor goes bad, then it tells you you're low. You add a quart of oil, and then it tells you you're still low. So you can add another quart, and then you'll probably figure out something's not right. So we're just going to let it idle here as it's measuring the oil level in the engine. There we go, right at the maximum amount, so perfect. And that's how easy it is to change the oil in this BMW.